The ballroom glowed beneath golden chandeliers.
Did he pick her up from the charity
Laughter
line?
bounced off the marble walls, glasses clinked, and fortunes whispered. And then, silence. A teenage girl stepped inside, holding her father's hand. She was the daughter of the CEO, black. Confident yet tender in the weight of so many eyes, her dress was crimson red, bold, radiant, a flame in a room full of polished ice. One of the billionaire's sons leaned back in his chair, a smirk curling like poison. Did he pick her up from the charity line outside? The table erupted. Laughter, sharp as broken glass. Mockery echoed beneath the chandelier's glow. Her face flushed, her chest tightening. She gripped her father's hand harder, his jaw locked, fists trembling beneath the linen tablecloth. He could have ignored it. He could have swallowed the insult. But in that instant, something inside him broke. The room thought it was just a joke, just harmless cruelty. What they didn't know was that this single moment of arrogance would shatter everything they had. Within minutes, their billion-dollar deal would collapse. Marcus King was not supposed to be in rooms like these. At least, that's what society once told him. Born in a neighborhood where broken streetlights outnumbered working ones, he grew up with the constant reminder that opportunity was reserved for others. His mother cleaned houses. His father drove cabs until his back gave out. But Marcus had something few could see at first glance, an iron will. Every slammed door, every no dressed up as polite rejection, every time an investment bank smiled in his face, but lost his paperwork the moment they saw his skin. He remembered it all. He turned humiliation into hunger. He turned obstacles into blueprints. And over the years, brick by brick, he built an empire in technology, his own software company, one that now powered corporations across continents. But even with billions under his belt, he knew the truth. To them, he would never be Marcus, the genius CEO. He would always be Marcus, the black CEO who somehow made it. That subtle somehow hung like a shadow in every deal, every boardroom. And then there was Amara, 16, sharp but quiet, with her father's determination hidden behind her mother's soft eyes. She adored books more than parties, music more than money. And tonight, her red dress wasn't just fabric, it was a shield. A way of saying, I belong here, whether you like it or not. She didn't choose this world of champagne and arrogance, but she loved her father enough to walk beside him through it. He wanted her to see more, to feel what success looked like, to know her place was not just in the audience, but at the table. The Whitfords had no such weight on their shoulders. Billionaires for 3 generations, their empire built on oil, shipping, and, some whispered, more questionable deals tucked away in offshore accounts. Edward Whitford, the patriarch, wore arrogance like a tailored suit. His sons inherited his smile, his money, and his cruelty. To the Whitfords, Marcus was a partner of convenience. His technology could save their empire billions in efficiency. But deep down, they never saw him as an equal. He was a tool, useful, replaceable. And that's why, when Amara walked into their glittering ballroom, it didn't matter to them that she was brilliant in her own right. It didn't matter that Marcus had built one of the most powerful tech companies in the nation. All they saw was a target. It started with whispers. She doesn't look like she belongs. Then smirks. Then laughter. Amara lowered her gaze, pretending not to hear. But Marcus heard. He always heard, because he knew that every smile in this room was a mask. Behind it was the same voice he'd grown up with, the voice that told him he wasn't enough. And yet he played their game, handshakes, polite nods, and listening as they bragged about yachts and private islands. Amara sat beside him, her small hand still clutching his. She didn't let go. That's when it happened. The cruelest laugh. the sharpest insult. Did he pick her up from the charity line outside? Time slowed. Marcus's heart pounded. His daughter's face burned. The Whitfords laughed as if it were all harmless fun, but Marcus's silence was not surrender. It was a calculation, because what the Whitfords didn't know was that Marcus had already been watching them. He knew things about their empire, secrets buried under paperwork, disguised in shell companies. He hadn't planned to use them tonight, but now it was different. The insult wasn't just to his daughter, it was for everything he had built, everything he had endured, and when Marcus King decided he had nothing left to lose, he became the most dangerous man in the room. The ride home was silent, the kind of silence that carries more weight than words. Amara sat in the back of the black sedan, her crimson dress glowing faintly in the light of passing streetlights. She looked out the window, blinking hard, but a single tear still slipped down her cheek. Marcus saw it. His chest tightened. He had faced boardroom betrayals, racist slurs, and being shut out of billion-dollar deals. But watching his daughter's spirit crack under the weight of cruelty, that was different. That was unforgivable. Finally, she spoke, her voice trembling. "Daddy, why do they hate me? Why do they laugh like that?" Marcus exhaled slowly, staring at the city lights. "They don't hate you, baby. They hate what you remind them of. That no matter how much money they've hoarded, no matter how much power they flaunt, they can't control everything. They can't erase us." "But it hurts," Amara whispered. He reached over, took her hand. "I know, and I promise you, they will regret every word." That night, long after Amara had fallen asleep, Marcus sat in his study. The house was quiet, the only sound the faint ticking of the grandfather clock. On the desk before him were files, contracts, and something more dangerous, evidence. For months, his CFO, a sharp-witted woman named Evelyn, had been warning him. "The Whitfords are hiding something. Offshore accounts, shell companies, tax evasions that would make the headlines burn." Marcus hadn't cared then. He wanted peace, not war. But now, he stared at the folder, his fists clenched. He could already see the headlines. Whitford Empire exposed in billion-dollar scandal. The temptation burned. The next morning, he called Evelyn into his office. She closed the door, her eyes sharp behind wire-framed glasses. "You've decided, haven't you?" she asked. Marcus nodded slowly. "They laughed at my daughter, in front of me, in front of the world. Evelyn, they think they're untouchable." "They're not," she said coldly. "Not if we do this right." But she hesitated. "Marcus, once you start this, there's no going back. They'll come after you. Your company, your family." "I know," Marcus said. His jaw was steel. "But I've swallowed enough insults in my lifetime. This one broke the last piece of silence I had left." Meanwhile, Amara noticed the change in him. At breakfast, he was quieter. At dinner, distracted. Late at night, she would hear the faint rustle of papers from his office. One evening, she finally walked in, barefoot, holding a blanket around her shoulders. "Daddy, are you going to hurt them?" He looked up, startled. Her eyes were wide, not with fear of him, but with worry. "I don't want you to lose everything," she whispered. Marcus rose, knelt beside her, and placed his hand gently on her cheek. "I'm not doing this for revenge, baby. I'm doing this because no girl, no child, no person should ever be made to feel less than human. If I let this slide, then I will have failed you. I've failed us." She hugged him, tight. "Then, promise me one thing." "What?" "Promise me you'll win." Marcus closed his eyes. "I promise." The planning began in shadows. Evelyn arranged late-night calls with investigative journalists she trusted. Marcus's legal team quietly cross-checked documents that traced the Whitfords' accounts to money laundering in the Caribbean. Every new revelation was worse than the last. Millions hidden, workers exploited, a trail of corruption buried under luxury estates. The deeper Marcus dug, the more dangerous it became. Twice he caught black cars idling outside his home. Once, his email was hacked, though his IT security traced it back to servers owned by a Whitford shell company. The empire was stirring. They knew he was moving. And yet Marcus pressed forward. Each night, Amara would slip into his study with 2 mugs of hot cocoa, sitting silently as her father pored over files. Sometimes she'd read beside him. Sometimes she'd rest her head on his arm. But in her quiet presence he found strength. Finally, the plan was ready. Evelyn looked him in the eye one late evening. "The charity gala, next week. The Whitfords are hosting it. Cameras, press, politicians, all of them will be there." Marcus's brow furrowed. And that's when you end them, publicly. One speech, one reveal, and the world will watch their empire collapse in real time. The thought was terrifying and exhilarating. But Marcus wasn't naive. He knew the Whitfords would fight back. He knew they would smear him, try to bury him, maybe even threaten his family, which is why he had a backup plan. Encrypted drives are stored in multiple places. Journalists are already briefed and ready to publish at the first sign of silence from him. Evelyn called it overkill. Marcus called it insurance. The night before the gala, Amara found him staring out the window, his reflection blurred against the city skyline. "Are you scared?" she asked softly. He chuckled bitterly. "Terrified? Then why do it?" "Because courage isn't about not being scared, Amara. It's about being scared and still choosing to fight." She nodded, slipped her hand into his. "Then I'll be brave with you." Marcus looked at her, pride swelling in his chest. Whatever happened tomorrow, he knew one thing. The Whitfords had already lost something they would never understand. Because while they clung to power and money, he held something far more substantial: love, resilience, and the burning fire of justice. And tomorrow night, the world would see it burn. The Whitfords' charity gala was a spectacle of wealth and opulence. Crystal chandeliers cast a soft glow across the velvet curtains. Cameras flashed at gowns and tuxedos worth more than most families made in a year. Servers floated through the crowd with trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres no one could pronounce. Marcus stood at the entrance, his daughter Amara by his side in the same crimson dress. The crowd turned, whispers trailing like smoke. Some smiled politely, but he could see it. Their smirks, their doubt, their unspoken, "What's he doing here?" The Whitfords waited near the stage. Edward Whitford himself, silver hair, sharp jaw, smile like a wolf in silk. His sons flanked him, arrogance dripping from every tailored stitch. "Marcus," Edward greeted, extending a hand that felt more like a leash than a welcome. "Glad you could make it. Tonight is history in the making." Marcus shook his hand. Firm, steady. But his eyes were already steel. "Yes, Edward, history." As the evening unfolded, speeches filled the air. Politicians praised the Whitfords' philanthropy. Guests applauded their vision. Cameras drank every second. To the world, they were untouchable kings, until Marcus stepped forward. The microphone squealed softly as he adjusted it. The ballroom hushed. All eyes turned to him. The black CEO standing under the chandelier's glare, his daughter watching. From the corner of the stage, he took a slow breath, his voice calm, deliberate. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are gathered here tonight to celebrate generosity, success, and legacy. But what is a legacy built on lies worth? What is generosity when it's stolen from the hands of others?" A ripple of confusion spread. Murmurs. Shifting chairs. Edward Whitford's smile tightened. Marcus continued, each word heavy with fire. "For years, The Whitford Empire has been praised as a beacon of wealth and power. But behind the polished marble and designer suits lies a rot. Offshore. Accounts, shell companies, exploitation of workers who will never step foot in rooms like this. The audience gasped. Edward Whitford's sons exchanged panicked glances. Cameras zoomed closer, red lights blinking. Edward stepped forward, his voice sharp. "Marcus, enough! This is neither the time nor the place." Marcus cut him off, his tone rising. "Oh, it's exactly the time. Because just last week, while Edward Whitford was preparing this gala, his companies were laundering millions through Caribbean accounts. Money stolen, hidden, funneled into the pockets of men who laugh at the idea of accountability." The crowd erupted. Voices clashed. Journalists scrambled for their phones. Marcus reached into his jacket, holding up a sleek black drive. Every detail, every receipt, every transfer, already verified, already backed up, already sent to the press waiting outside these very doors. Edward's mask cracked. His face flushed crimson, sweat beading on his forehead. "You think you can destroy us? Do you know who we are?" Marcus's eyes blazed. "Yes, that's why it ends tonight." Gasps, shouts. The room spun into chaos, and then, the twist, the giant LED screen behind the stage flickered. Suddenly, documents, spreadsheets, and wire transfers flashed across it, projected for everyone to see. Names of shell companies, sums of money in the millions. Signatures. Edward's, his sons, their executives. The audience froze, jaws dropping. It wasn't Marcus's doing. Evelyn, his CFO, had hacked the system from outside, timing it perfectly. Marcus had only given the signal Edwards. Sons lunged toward the tech booth, shouting orders. But it was too late. The evidence was everywhere. Screens, cameras, journalists live streaming to millions. The billion-dollar deal, the one that was supposed to crown the Whitford's empire, shattered in seconds. Investors in the room began pulling out their phones, issuing frantic sell orders. Politicians backed away from the family as if they carried a plague. Reporters swarmed, their microphones like daggers, and at the center of it all stood Marcus, calm, unbroken. Edward stumbled forward, pointing a shaking finger. You planned this. You brought your daughter here to, what? To humiliate me?" Marcus's jaw tightened. His voice dropped, low and deadly. "No, Edward. You did that yourself. You mocked a child because of the color of her skin. You laughed, thinking there would be no consequences. But arrogance has a cost." The ballroom fell into a heavy silence. Cameras clicked like gunfire. Amara stepped forward, her crimson dress blazing under the lights. For the first time all evening, she lifted her chin, her eyes unflinching. "My father taught me something tonight," she said softly, her voice carrying across the stunned crowd. "Courage isn't about power. It's about standing up when the world tries to silence you." The audience erupted, not with laughter, but with thunderous applause. Not everyone clapped, but enough. Enough to shift the tide. Edward Whitford's empire crumbled in real time. His phone buzzed with messages, investors withdrawing, banks freezing accounts, partners cutting ties. His billion-dollar deal collapsed before his very eyes, and all because of one moment, one insult, one father who refused to stay silent. The Whitford ballroom no longer glittered. The chandeliers still hung above, but their golden glow felt cold, useless. The once proud family stood in ruins, phones buzzing with bad news, lawyers scrambling, investors vanishing like smoke. Edward Whitford's face had drained of color. His voice, once commanding, cracked with desperation as he barked orders to aides who no longer listened. His sons, who had laughed so loudly hours before, now stood frozen, their eyes darting toward the exits, their reputations disintegrating in real time. Cameras swarmed them, microphones shoved in their faces, questions cut like knives. "Mr. Whitford, do you deny the allegations?" Is it true you funneled money through offshore accounts? Did you exploit workers overseas for profit? There was no escape. Their empire wasn't collapsing tomorrow, it was collapsing now. Marcus stepped back from the chaos, his hand resting gently on Amara's shoulder. She leaned into him, her eyes wide but steady. She wasn't the trembling girl from earlier. Tonight, she had found her voice. They walked past the crowd, past the reporters, past the Whitfords drowning in their own lies. Each step was freedom. Each step was a victory. By the time they reached the street outside, flashing cameras followed them, but the tone had changed now. No longer suspicious, no longer mocking, respectful, curious, even admiring. Mr. King, was this planned? Do you believe this will change the way corporate America treats black CEOs? Amara, how did it feel to stand up on stage? Marcus paused, his daughter's hand still clasped in his. He didn't answer directly. Instead, he looked at her, letting her speak first. Amara took a breath, her voice trembling but brave. It felt powerful. For once, they couldn't laugh at us. For once, the truth was louder than their money. The reporters scribbled, the cameras clicked, and Marcus smiled, not at the cameras, but at his daughter. For the first time in years, he felt something rare in business, rarer still in battles. Like these, he felt peace. Within days, headlines dominated every network. Whitford Empire collapses in corruption scandal. Marcus King exposes billion-dollar fraud. From laughter to legacy, how a father and daughter took down the Whitfords. Politicians scrambled to distance themselves from the disgraced family. The deal, once worth over $1 billion, was declared void. Regulators launched investigations. Stock prices plummeted. And Marcus? His company didn't just survive, it thrived. Investors who once doubted him now called his office daily, eager to align with a man who stood for truth. The respect he had been denied for decades suddenly flooded in, though he knew better than to trust it unquestioningly, because respect born from fear was fragile. But respect born from courage? That lasted. In their quiet home, away from the cameras, Marcus and Amara shared a simple dinner one evening. No chandeliers, no champagne, just a father and daughter at the kitchen table. Amara looked at him, eyes shining. You kept your promise. Marcus tilted his head. Which one? You said they would regret it. She smiled softly. And you said you'd win. He chuckled, shaking his head. It wasn't about winning, Amara. It was about showing them that no matter how much money they have, no matter how loud their laughter is, dignity is something they can never take from us. She reached across the table, squeezing his hand. Then, we both won. And in that quiet moment, father and daughter, survivors and victors, the world outside faded away. Because the deal had collapsed, the Whitfords had fallen. And the Kings, they had risen. Sometimes the world seems set against us. Sometimes the weight of injustice, the sting of mockery, and the cold walls of privilege make us feel small, powerless, unseen. But Marcus King's story and his daughter Amara's courage reminds us that even in the darkest rooms, even in the loudest laughter of cruelty, strength can rise. Strength isn't always measured in money or status. It's measured in the choices we make when the world tells us we're less than enough. Marcus could have walked away that night. He could have ignored the insult, smiled politely, and let the Whitfords' arrogance slide. But he didn't. He chose courage. He chose dignity. He decided to protect his daughter, and in doing so, exposed the truth for everyone to see. Amara learned something that many adults never do. That bravery isn't the absence of fear. Bravery is acting despite fear, standing tall when the world tries to make you small, And together, father and daughter proved that even the mightiest empires, built on lies, arrogance, and injustice, can fall when confronted with truth and courage. And here's the final thought to carry with you. What if this happened in your school, your workplace, your community? What would you do if someone dared to mock, belittle, or dismiss you or someone you loved simply because of the color of their skin? The story of Marcus and Amara isn't just theirs. It's a reminder, a warning, and a call to action. Because injustice thrives in silence, and change begins with the courage to speak, the courage to act, and the courage to refuse to be invisible. So ask yourself, in the face of cruelty, will you stand? Will you fight? Will you be the flame in the darkness that no arrogance can extinguish? Because one act of courage can collapse an empire, one voice can expose the truth. One moment of bravery can change everything. Thank you for watching this. If you like this video, please comment below, hit the like button, and subscribe.